Hello and welcome to Riverside Crafts. Today I am going to be showing you how I colour using alcohol markers. All these samples here have been coloured using alcohol markers. I use a range of different ones, but today I shall be mainly using the Illustrators by Spectrum Noir with a couple of pro markers, just because they're all mixed together and it's what I have. The stamp is by Jane Gill. It's one of her scribble stamps. It's designed for Christmas, so it's designed to be a polar bear. And then I've had a play with it and come up with a few others along the way. So let's see how we get on with this as we go. Right, I'm going to show you where I start and where we go from right from the beginning. So it'll be each step. So the cardstock that I shall be using is by Crafter's Companion. It's Nina Classic Crest card. It's a really nice, super smooth cardstock that is perfect for alcohol markers, which is important. Let's put the stamp in. This is my stamp platform. If you normally watch my lives, you'll know that I use it all the time. So here we go. I've picked up my stamp. Today I'll be using Memento, which is a dye-based ink, water-based, and as you can see, so I remember, I've written alcohol markers all over it, so I don't forget that this is the one that I need to use when I am working with my alcohol markers. One of the things that I learned quite early on is that two alcohols don't go together and two waters will mix up and get muddy. So to stop from getting muddy, you use one of them will be alcohol and the other must be watercolour. So you always use opposites. So if I'm using an alcohol pad, I will be colouring using watercolour. If I'm colouring with alcohol markers, I need to be stamping with a water-based ink. Okay, so there is my nicely stamped bear. Put him back on his stamp already. To go away for a minute so I know where he is. Put this out the way. So, right. One of the things that I do when I am looking at what colours I'm going to be working with is all the little strips I chop off when I am levelling them all up to put them onto my cardstock. All these little strips of the Spectrum, Nina card, I collect and I use them as my colour strips when I'm working with alcohol markers, so that I know what it's going to look like. Because if you change your card, your alcohol marker will change slightly as well. So you'll get a slightly different colour from a different cardstock. So it's always helpful to have done a test strip on whatever cardstock it is that you're using. Okay, so I'm going to be doing him more like a polar bear, but I'm going to do him slightly darker because it's easier for you to see my colours. So it's going to be a little bit darker than what he would have been if I'd been doing him just for my work, you know, for doing what we wanted to. So I just like to use, which ones am I using? 1, 2, 3, and that one. I think that's the right ones. Okay, so I'm using 3 here. I've got a muted brown 1, mute brown 3, and EB, which is a natural brown. So it's going to be slightly darker than a polar bear, but it's more so that you can see what it would be. You just use your paler colours when you're doing your polar bears. So I tend to work with 3s, and I always use my lightest and give myself a base to work with. One of the other things, a tip I will give you is, if you're working with alcohol markers, do not work directly onto a nicely polished table. The markers will take the polish off for you very quickly. So you always work either onto a glass mat or a pad of cardstock or paper underneath what you're working on, because if the alcohol markers will seep through to the back of your work, which is what you want. You want the colour to be coming through the back, because that's what helps you to blend it. That's one of the reasons why you wouldn't colour directly onto the card. You'd always make it as a topper when you're using an alcohol marker. I'm using the brush end at the moment, mainly because it allows me to put a lot of ink down very quickly. if I'm doing detailed colouring, I always use my bullet nib because I get a better finish. Okay, but this is just so I can put a decent amount of colour down quite quickly, so we can see where we're going from here. Right, that will do me for now. Okay, so I've got my base colour down. I'm going to go with my middle colour, which is going to be the MB3. Okay, I'm just going to put myself a line of colour where I think the shadow should be. So I'm just putting some shadow colour in. Okay, I'm hoping you can all see this nicely while I'm working. I can't answer you at this moment in time, but if you leave me a question on the comments at the end, I will answer any questions you've got and any queries. But at the moment I can't actually see anything coming from you because I'm sat with the camera above me, which is my phone, so I don't really have the option to have a nose to see what's going on. Okay, so just be aware. But if you've got a big question or something you want to know that me to repeat, just leave it in the comments and I'll put it in there for you, no problem. Okay, so that's my mid-tone, which makes him look a bit weird at the moment because he's now all stripy. Now I'm going to put my dark down. Now I'm only going to put a little bit down because it's not really to be lots of dark on it, so I'm just going to put it in right way under where the edges of my scarf are. Okay, you can see I've actually gone over onto the scarf, but I'm not panicking at the minute because I've got a little bit of more work to do and it will help hide it when I get there. A little bit of shading around where he's sitting, around the inside edges here. That will just help. Okay. Putting him there, put some in this one here. Right, now I'm going to go back to my palest one again, which is my muted brown one. And I'm going to go over it all. I'm going to go over it in circles. Normally if I was doing a fur, I would actually do strips, but I want to show you a technique which works really well for making sort of like these things look a bit more like a teddy and a bit more cute. Put a bit more. There we go. That's better. One of the things that's really nice about an alcohol marker is it doesn't matter if you are a bit of a scribbly colourer, because it all blends at the end and you won't see all these marks at the moment. You won't see them when it's finished because they'll all just sort of gradually bleed one into the other, which is quite nice. I'm just going to put the little bits of colour into the ends of the scribble bits so it looks a bit neater where we're going with it. Right, so I'm now going to go and do his head. Okay. I'm just coming around here. I hope you've all had a nice week. Been very exciting here because it was my granddaughter's first birthday, so I was houseful yesterday, and very nice to see everybody for a change after all this lockdown. It was nice to see family and friends that came. It was lovely. Got to spend a little bit of time being a proud grandma, which was really nice. Now you'll notice that I've come here and I've left a bit that I haven't touched, and I'll show you why in a minute. It's more because I'm going to be putting his muzzle on, and I tend to go back to using what I would normally use as a skin tone. And I'll show you why in a minute, just because it makes him look a bit more friendly. Okay, I'm just going to use my dark brown to do the other ear there. Do a little bit on top of that one there, just give it a bit more of a colour. There we go, you can go in there like so. Done. Right, now I'm going to be using some of the FS's, which are flesh tones in this colour. I'm just going to go in and do a base one around his nose. This is the FS7. Okay, and it just sort of blends in a bit, but it gives you a sort of a slightly peachier tone, which is quite nice around where his muzzle is. It's just a little bit lighter. Okay, and then I'm just going to use the TN2. I'm just going to put a little bit here, just where it would be sort of coming in, a little bit there, so it looks like he's got a bit of a smile, under his nose. And I'm going to go back a blend and blend it, just so it doesn't stand out too much. Just had that bit on it. Now I'm going to use a little bit of coral. This is Coral 5 and it's very dark, but I'm only using a little bit. I'm just putting a little bit here just to sort of help blend that in. Okay, I'm going to go back in again with my FS7. I'm just going to blend that down a little bit so it's not quite so heavy. Okay, and then go back with my muted brown 1. I'm just going to go around that edge there and add it in. Okay, using my bullet dib, I'm just going to fill in the little bits along here that will give you that feeling that it's actually his fur. Okay, so we're doing that quite nicely there, and that, so that's not doing too bad. I'm going to do his feet. Now I always do his feet pads here. I always do them in the darkest colour that I'm using, so they sort of stand out. You can hear the little jingling and jangling in the background. I do apologise. It sounds like someone was trying to FaceTime me. I've muted my phone, but I've obviously forgotten to do it on my iPad. That doesn't take much, does it, to forget things? You get so used to not seeing people and not really doing a lot, and then all of a sudden everybody's out and about again, and you're getting all these people ringing and saying hi. Okay. I'm now going to colour his feet pads in with the same colours that I did his muzzle. So I'm going to go back in again with my flesh tones, okay, to do his foot pads. Right, here we go. So we've got a next one up, which is the tan. I'm going to put a bit more colour here. Put on the bits here. There we go. One of the nice things about doing this is quite quick. It doesn't take forever, and you can really just sort of do a bit here, and it's up to you how much time you spend on it. And you can go over it again and again. If you for some reason you get a phone call halfway through colouring, it won't mess it up. You just go back and you can start all over again, which makes life an awful lot easier. I want the tan and that one a minute to go over there. There we go, that's better. Right, okay, so I'm now just going to do a scarf while everything's just settling a minute, for me to see where I'm going to go next. I'm just going to do his scarf for a minute, and I'm going to show you the differences between how he looks now and what I do to make him look like he's fluffy and furry. Now, if I'd got a dark colour in here where I've gone over just in here, all I need to do is take my blender pen and colour just in front of it, so not colouring on top of it, and just colour towards it, and it will push it back out of the area that you've coloured into, so that you'll eventually end up, it's not there, it will just take it all out, and you'll end up with a nice clear. The only colour that it doesn't do this with is red. Red will leave a slight stain, so if you know, I do my red colouring last, because it's sort of, if I get it in the wrong place, and it will change everything. So it's something I tend to be a bit more careful with, and I take my time over, especially if I've got to blend it. Okay. Okay, and a bit of green. So he's got his Christmas scarf on. Right, so what I'm going to do is we're going to pick up one of my other bears that I've coloured. Here we go. This one will work. Okay, can you see how he looks? Oops, get me the camera, helps with that doing. He's got this sort of fluffy tone to him, hasn't he? He looks a little bit on the fluffy side. Where are we? We're going miles away today. Here we go. So it's slightly fluffy, okay? And that helps. Now, to do the fluffy bit, I'm just doing the here, and so it's dappled. I use my blender pen, and all I'm going to do is go in and literally just dot it, and it changes it from being really smooth and looking like it's sort of very flat to giving him what looks like curly fur. I don't do his foot pads at all. Okay. You can probably just see that now it's starting to get a bit more dotty, and it's starting to look like it's curly. It's no longer just a flat finish, even with all the shape, a bit of texture, and just makes him look a little bit different. It's harder to see until it's dry. When you first do it, you're like, oh, has ever done it? Is it working? And you can't really see. You need to wait for it to start to dry, because that's when you'll know whether or not your ink's moved. Okay? Right. So that's how I colour him. Now, just so that you know, the colours that I use to do him as a polar bear are the golden brown 1 and 2 and the muted brown 1. Okay, so I'm just going to quickly do my polar bear, but it's not so easy for you to see. We need to blend the colours because it's a lot lighter. And this is quite a golden colour, so it's quite a nice polar bear colourways for him. And that, so that's not too bad. Alright, so the colours that I used to do the polar bear samples, if you pop in the shop and you need to know, they've got the colours are written on the back of the actual samples in the shop, so they will tell you what colours I used as well. So don't worry if you forget, because it's easily done. I do quite regularly. So I'm doing exactly the same as I've done again. I'm putting my lightest colour down. I've given it quite a good coating to start with. I'm going to go in with my mid-tone again, and I'm going to basically just do the areas again where I'm going to have shading, because the light's going to be a bit more sort of not there in the same way. So sort of a bit around his scarf, around where he's sitting, his legs, sort of thing. And then I do the same on all of them. So it's the same technique that I'm going down with, and it's just putting a little bit darker again, but it's only just darker because I want my polar bear to be quite pale. And I found that actually it was very difficult to keep the colours as pale as I wanted, and to get that real nice sort of muted tone with him when I was colouring. He really needs to be just coloured. This makes him quite golden actually, which is nice, but it's, and that you can do him in greys, and I've done that, but that makes him look very cold, and I thought it looks nice when it's a bit warmer. Okay, so we're doing exactly the same. As you can see, it's all blended in quite well. The thing with the polar bear is you have to wait until it's dry. You can't really see what you've done until he's dried, when it comes to his colours, because they're all very similar, so you have to wait until it's dried out a bit. The colours do change as the alcohol evaporates, just so be aware of that one. They do slightly change. They will go a little bit lighter. But because you can colour him in any colours you like, and that he's not just for Christmas, he can be for any time, which is nice. So, you know, makes a nice little person's card with a bear on it, or a bigger person if you've got somebody who's really into bears. And you can actually just colour it up the way that you want it to be coloured, which is nice as well. So you've got a lot of options to play with there. So as you can see, that's him done in lighter tones. And as you can probably notice now, he's starting to go bobbly. Okay, so he's starting to get those bobbles coming now. So he's looking a little bit rougher around the edges and he's now looking a bit more dappled. Okay, so here we go again. These are the colours. And just so you can see what he looks like when he's finished off as a polar bear. There you go. So he looks nice and pale there as a polar bear as well. And if you're colouring him on brown cardstock, because Crafts Companion do a craft cardstock, which is just super smooth in the same Nina stock, and this is nice to work on, and gives you sort of, makes it a little bit more manly. Colour his scarf in and sort of any football colours, so you keep him going for quite that way quite happily. And obviously you can change him completely into a panda. This uses a little tiny bit of gesso just to do the white areas, and then when it's dry you colour in and you add in the greys to make it sort of go a bit more down as you like. But I hope you like that. I hope it's told you lots of things, and please leave me any messages if there's something you want to know in the end. So thank you very much.